Hello, welcome to my stream. I am KELTHUZ, I am Polish libertarian, and this is one of the very few streams I do in English, but I think this is something that we need to talk about, really. That is the recent prevalence of Polish libertarians coming out as pro-Palestinian sympathizers or even activists. So this is a very dangerous trend because in Poland, libertarians, that is libertarians who are not at the same time conservative right-wingers, libertarians were not particularly pro or anti-Israel. They were quite agnostic in this regard, and the only outspoken pro-Israel libertarians were the legendary Jacek Sierpiński and myself. Around 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, I even created sort of a trend for libertarians in Poland to actually, at least to some extent, be positive about Israel. And since October 7th, 2023, it all went to hell. This is somehow I don't understand how was it possible that after the greatest slaughter of Jews after the Holocaust, people felt the need to slander Israel and put themselves on the side of the terrorists. Perhaps we will try to explain that today. But anyway, I will not answer any chat questions, especially those asked in Polish. This is purely, exclusively English language stream for my English viewers, present and future. And let us begin. I will expose several prominent Polish libertarians who had the recent coming out on the side of the aggressors, on the side of the Palestinian aggressors. I will expose their lies and their manipulations, their emotionalism, and their complete lack of decency. These are actually very indecent, despicable people. Some of them I know personally. Of course, I unfriended them on Facebook. Yes, some libertarians lately celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk, but some of them didn't. This is not a rule. Yeah, we don't have to worry about Israel, definitely, because Hamas rule in Gaza is finished, but I'm talking about a wider trend in the West, about people who are supposed to be the advocates of freedom, of individual liberty, of civilization, yet they side with Palestinians and the Palestinian cause. I mean, there's nothing wrong siding with individual Palestinians and their plight, but siding with the Palestinian cause is truly despicable. It's like siding with the Nazi Germany cause in 1945, in the early 1945. So let's not waste time. I will I will now go right into examples. All right. Here's the first culprit. Mr. Norbert Slenzok, Dr. Norbert Slenzok. He's a political scientist at the University of Zielona Góra, and he has recently come out as a Palestinian sympathizer. He put the flag of Palestine on his profile picture, and he even says here that he had never ever put such a flag or any flag in his profile picture. He never engaged in any cause like that, but somehow the Palestinian cause made him do it. He starts his post with the word Israeli genocide in the Gaza Strip, which is obviously not true. It is pure emotionalism, contrafactual, but this academician, this libertarian academician, clearly doesn't care about facts, doesn't care about truth whenever Jews or Israel is involved. He says here that he rarely engages in putting flags on profile pictures. Symbolic trace of solidarity with Palestinians. This is what he says here. That he should put this symbolic trace of solidarity with Palestinians. But what kind of solidarity is it? Putting a flag of Palestine, which is there's not such a country as Palestine. This is a flag of a movement. This is a flag of a movement equivalent to a Third Reich flag waved by neo-Nazis today, because this flag of the Palestinian cause, what does it represent? It represents this. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's the English translation. That's the English version of this chant. But in Arabic, the chant goes, from water to water, Palestine will be Arab. So this flag and this chant represents extirpation of Jews from Israel, destruction of Israel basically, and replacement of Israel with some sort of a Palestinian state where no Jews are allowed. And what kind of society, what kind of government would such a state have? Well, definitely it would not be a liberal democracy like in Israel, but some sort of an autocratic rule like that of Hamas, a theocratic rule, or a kleptocratic rule like under Palestinian Authority, or any other authoritarian dictatorship known in the Middle East. I don't know, maybe they would elect a king. I don't know. But the Palestinian state would definitely not be a Western style democracy, especially considering the quality of people who represent the Palestinian movement. Anyway, he says here that years ago, being young and stupid, I expressed sympathy for the state which occupies, torments, and murders. That is Israel, of course. He believes that Israel occupies, torments, and murders the poor, oppressed Palestinians, which is only in very little part the case. That is the occupation of the West Bank. But Israel did not ask for this occupation. The occupation of the West Bank began in 1967 after Jordan attacked Israel during the gang-up war, that is Egypt, Syria and Jordan attacking Israel in June 1967. Israel defeated all three Arab dictatorships and, because of security reasons, conquered the West Bank and started the so-called occupation. But in fact, since 1994, since the establishment of Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian territories, that is the actual towns and villages where Palestinians live, they are under jurisdiction of Palestinian Authority. They are self-ruled by Palestinians themselves. And what does it look like? Well, the rule of Palestinian Authority is obviously authoritarian. There haven't been any elections since 2008. It's authoritarian, it's partly based on Sharia, so Palestinian women don't have much rights at all. Homosexuals are killed. Other minorities, I'm not even mentioning other minorities because there aren't any. And obviously, Jews are not allowed under the Palestinian Authority territories. They are only allowed in the so-called B zone of the West Bank, but only because Israeli military protects them. So, yeah, that's how the reality of Palestinian society looks like. And obviously, Norbert Slenzak supports the way the things are there. All right. So the thing that these people actually believe is that Israel fighting a defensive war against the genocidal maniacs of Hamas and causing a lot of civilian casualties, collateral damage, but not this is not the scope of collateral damage caused, for instance, by Americans in Fallujah, or by Americans and British during World War II, definitely not. But these people, like Norbert, they are really psyched up about 60,000 casualties in the Gaza war. They call it genocide, even though it is not purposeful destruction of civilians, purposeful destruction of a people. Israel is conducting a very hard war in a heavily urbanized area, basically in a 2 million city, in which Hamas built basically a fortress, underground fortress, and uses hospitals, schools, kindergartens, and other civilian infrastructure as their basis of operation. And Israel has no choice, if it wants to really defeat Hamas, to strike these buildings. That's why Gaza looks like it was devastated, but in fact, around 25% of apartments, of living space was devastated by bombings and military action. 75% of Gaza is intact. The propaganda doesn't say that, obviously. So those people like Norbert, they obviously don't understand how urban warfare is conducted. They omit, evade facts that Israel made sure that the least amount of collateral damage was done at the cost of Israeli soldiers' lives, actually. Because if Israel went into Gaza like Americans went into German cities during World War II, then 100% of Gaza would be leveled totally. And the number of civilians killed would be much higher. The relatively high number of civilian casualties in the Gaza war is because Hamas, on purpose, uses civilians deaths for its propaganda purposes. Because Gaza civilians could have easily been hidden in the tunnels underneath Gaza if Hamas allowed civilians to hide, like Ukrainians are allowed to use shelters. So the civilian deaths during Russian bombings of Ukraine are limited, but not in Gaza. Because in Gaza, Hamas, the government of Gaza, Hamas, does not allow civilians to use shelters. Because the shelters, the tunnels built by Hamas, are exclusively to be used by Hamas fighters. And this is the reason why civilians die in such high number in Gaza. And this is why Dr. Norbert Slenzok is simply a despicable liar and manipulator. And he sides with terrorists. This is like siding with the Nazis in April 1945, exactly. This is like siding with the German Nazis in 1945, seeing the devastation of German cities by American and British bombers. Oh, Crimea River. If you are a genocidal maniac and you start a war, you need to be defeated. And if you do not want to unconditionally surrender, you will be devastated. You will be obliterated. Your cities will be turned to ash. Hamas is today's Nazi Germany and must be destroyed. It's being destroyed, fortunately, although Israel should have wiped out the political leadership of Hamas in Qatar on October 8th, 2023, the day after they slaughtered 1,200 Jews. Israel should have struck into the heart of the terrorist state of Qatar, killing Hamas leadership, who celebrated the slaughter. But it didn't, because it was afraid of American reaction. Anyway, Norbert Slenzok being an academician, he really jumped the shark here. Oh, by the way, he is posing with his doctoral dissertation, Political Philosophy of Hans Hermann Hoppe, which is telling in itself, because Hans Hermann Hoppe, the follower of Rothbard, is the leading paleo-libertarian monster, the intellectual devil behind anti-Israeli sentiments of some of the modern libertarians. Let me check the chat. Just to add something. So Norbert claims that Israel occupies Palestinians, but Israel has not occupied Gaza since 2005. So how does Norbert reconcile that with his claim that Israel occupies Palestinians? Well, he doesn't. He ignores this fact. Yeah, one of the commenters here with the Israeli flag I commend you for that. Yes, they evade fact that Arab citizens of Israel fight in volunteer Arabian battalions in IDF, obviously, and they are in the first line of the front. Yes, exactly, they are. So the claim that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza is quite funny, considering that it is the Arab-Palestinian soldiers in service of the Israeli Defense Forces who are supposedly committing this genocide. So, as you can see, ziep, ziep, ziep. This is the Polish word for, I don't know, how would you translate ziep into English? Anyway, this is exactly the attitude of many persons like that, to consciously and purposefully distort facts about the war in Gaza. But the worst thing about Norbert is his wife. His wife, who is not even a libertarian. As far as I know, she's a nationalist. She's a Polish nationalist. And she turned against Israel some time ago. And she's a very low IQ person. So she always tries to appear much smarter than she is. And here she mouths to other Facebook users that the world didn't magically begin on October 7th. Make an effort and read a book by Norman Finkelstein. Inquest to the Martyrdom of Gaza. So yeah, Norman Finkelstein, a piece of ass. Complete piece of ass. Recommending his books is a really bad idea, I tell ya. I read a book by Norman Finkelstein in 2002. It was Holocaust Industry, and it was one of the worst books, the most despicable books I've ever read. But anyway, what Norman Finkelstein does in this book, Inquest to the Martyrdom of Gaza, he's, first of all, the title, the martyrdom. So is Norman Finkelstein an Islamist? If he thinks that the people of Gaza are martyrs to the cause. But anyway, this book is a war pornography book. Finkelstein bombards you with so-called statistics about deaths in Gaza caused by Israeli bombs. So he wants to cause an emotional effect in you by getting you roused up and very much enraged by what Israeli army did to the poor Palestinian civilians and their children. But he totally evades and omits the cause of the conflicts in Gaza. For instance, that stupid Norbert's wife writes that every few years Israel made bombing runs on Gaza, on this piece of land completely devoid of anti-aircraft defense, killing hundreds, even thousands of people, massacring infrastructure, schools, hospitals. All is documented in reports. Operation Cast Lead. Exactly. What caused Operation Cast Lead in 2008-2009? It was Hamas' bombardment of Israel with around 2,000 rockets and mortar missiles. It started in 2007 when Hamas massacred all the opposition to its power in Gaza, including Fatah, and started bombarding Israel with rockets and mortars. And this is why Israel had to perform a military operation called Cast Lead, which killed around 300 Gazan civilians because Hamas used them as human shields, covering the launch sites with civilians. And of course, one could ask, why did Hamas attack Israel with rockets and mortars? Well, Veronica probably doesn't know that, but it was because Israel blockaded Gaza when Hamas took power. But not only Israel blockaded Gaza, Egypt blockaded Gaza too. Why did they? Because Hamas was and still is a terrorist organization, a globally recognized terrorist organization, which as soon as it took power in Gaza, started supplying itself with weapons, especially from Iran, Islamic Republic of Iran, with weapons to kill Israelis. So all those rockets and mortars fired on Israel civilians areas by Hamas were supplied by Iran. So if Israel did not put a blockade on Gaza in 2007, there would be much more rockets falling on Israeli civilians. So that blockade was totally and is totally legal. Another, Operation Protective Edge. It was 2014 when Hamas operatives dug tunnels under the border of Gaza into Israel, kidnapped 3 yeshiva students and butchered them like pigs. So what was Israel supposed to do? Just let Hamas do that again and again, attacking kibbutzes all over Israel, southern Israel? No, Israel came into Gaza in 2014 and again made a very limited operation. So I consider Operation Cast Lead and Operation Protective Edge incredibly futile, basically, because Netanyahu was the prime minister back then, as he usually always is, and he failed. He failed to destroy Hamas. He thought that doing a limited operation in Gaza would make Hamas stop, but it never is. And Netanyahu knew that. Because Netanyahu, in the 90s, he wrote a book about fighting terrorism, and he never, ever took any lessons from that book, from his own book. So, really, if Israel went with full force in 2008-2009 during the Operation Cast Lead and destroyed Hamas, and even if it devastated Gaza just like it did this time, then there wouldn't be a protective edge, there wouldn't be current Gaza war, there wouldn't be the October 8th massacre. So it was all Netanyahu's fault. But Israel obviously was under a very heavy pressure from the public world opinion back then. Because the accusations that Israel was committing genocide obviously appeared back then. They always appear whenever Israel tries to defend itself. Alright, let's continue. This stupid Norbert's wife, she also mentions the Great March of Return in 2018. The Great March of Return in 2018? Hey, wasn't it in fact an invasion of the Gaza-Israel border by hundreds of aggressive Gazans armed with machetes, Molotov cocktails, some were armed with AK-47s. Because, Veronica, I don't know if you understand English, probably not, but let me tell you about another great March of Return. It was on September 1st, 1939. And all those young Germans wanted to return to the ancestral lands in Poland, but, the evil Poles decided to attack these young German men on September 1st, 1939, with tanks, artillery, infantry, and air force. So why didn't Poles allow Germans to return to the ancestral lands in Poland in 1939? Well, perhaps for the same reason Israelis did not allow hundreds of armed young men to go through armed border in 2018. Because being armed with a machete or a Molotov cocktail or AK-47 shows that your intentions are not very friendly, don't you think? So she claims that Israeli snipers were purposefully targeting medics, journalists, in heads. Are you stupid? Have you ever shot a rifle? Do you know how hard it is to target a head of a moving target? She claims that they targeted people purposefully in their knees so they could mutilate them for life, which is obviously not true. The trained soldiers are always trained to shoot in the center mass, that is in the chest, unless they don't want to kill. And during the siege of the Gazan-Israeli border in 2018, most of the Gazans were not shot to death, even though Israeli army had the full right to do so. They were supposed to be stopped by not killing them. So, well, if they were hit in knees, so tough luck. But volenti non fit iuria. If you assault a border with the intent to kill Israeli civilians, you may get shot in the knee. So, anyway, this is how anti-Israeli fanatics think. So, this Weronika Chwastik-Slęzok, Norbert's wife, she's obviously completely counterfactual. She doesn't listen to any reason. She doesn't listen to facts because she has made her mind totally. And, those people, they never mention the slaughter of Jews. They never mention Second Intifada. Maybe I will mention Second Intifada then. Second Intifada, which was launched when Yasser Arafat declined or refused further negotiations. He refused the Israeli offer of peace, which basically Arafat gave Palestinians 98% of the West Bank for their own state. And Arafat refused that. He refused the Palestinian state proposal and launched the Second Intifada, which killed over 1,000 Israeli civilians because Palestinians simply infiltrated Israel's territory and blew themselves in cafes, at discotheques, and so on. Because back then, West Bank was not blocked off by walls from Israel. That is, the Palestinian cities were not blocked off by walls. Because Palestinians used to, Palestinians, those, oppressed, tormented, occupied Palestinians used to work in Israel daily. Palestinians were the major workforce in Israel, especially in construction industry. And it all stopped because of Second Intifada. But if we mention Second Intifada, why don't we mention First Intifada, which was started by Hamas in 1987 in Gaza? Because before 1987, Gaza also was not blocked off by walls. Gaza was a territory which was taken over from Egypt because of the Six-Day War in 1967. And Gazan people were free to travel to Israel back and forth. Israelis visited Gaza on weekends, for example, to buy some stuff on their farmers' markets and so on. So there was a free flow of people, of goods and of capital, obviously, between Gaza and Israel from 1967 to 1987. So what happened? In 1987, there was an accident involving a civilian Israeli truck driver who hit a market stand in Gaza. Crashed into a market stall or something like that, and this sparked a wave of unrest, which turned, thanks to Hamas, turned into an uprising, an intifada. And Palestinians, both in Gaza and in West Bank, started attacking Israeli soldiers, Israeli civilians, with rocks, with sticks, and so on. So, starting from 1987, Gaza had to be bordered off from Israel, and checkpoints had to be put there on the border with Gaza, because it became very dangerous for Israelis, for Jews, to travel there. And despite that, Palestinians in Gaza still had the ability to work in Israel. Getting a work permit in Israel was easy, and if you were a Gazan, you could still work in Israel, despite the atrocities the Palestinians did to Israel. So, where's the oppression? Where's the occupation? Where's the genocide? If you want to genocide the people, why do you let those people work in your companies? So, what else? Let me show you another piece of very bad person. Here he is, Sebastian Węglarz. He is the fundraiser for the foundation, for the Freedom and Entrepreneurship Foundation, whose founders I know personally and are supposedly good people. That is, they are pro-Israel. But this piece of crap person, Sebastian Węglarz, lately, that is in the beginning of September, he put on this photo, the Palestinian flag. And he says, "The truth must be spoken no matter what." Buddy, you've never even stood at an arm's length of the truth, man. Yeah, pro-freedom and pro-human rights activism. Well, let me tell you, there are no human rights under Palestinian Authority, and the only human rights Arab Palestinians have are those who live in Israel. I would never compromise my morals for a paycheck. And you know who pays? Jews pay. That is the insinuation here, I guess. So he says that while in Barcelona, he took part in events connected to the global Sumud flotilla. You know, that attention-seeking selfie flotilla of celebrities. The largest humanitarian maritime aid mission in history. You must be kidding me. Dozens of boats carrying representatives set sail from Barcelona. Did you know that they are still in Tunisia? They haven't reached Gaza in, what is it, 2 weeks? Their mission, to break the siege of Gaza. There is no siege of Gaza, and you will not break this siege. On board are doctors, activists, artists, politicians, yeah, attention-seeking whores, along with vast amounts of medicine and food destined for the starving and suffering people of Palestine. The starving and suffering people of Palestine are getting their food and their medicine through real humanitarian foundations, through real charities, who work day and night to bring the greatest amount of aid in history, thanks to Israel. Because before Israel got engaged into it, Hamas was stealing all of the aid and then selling it at exorbitant prices on the Gaza black market. So this bozo, Sebastian Węglarz, a total bozo, a clown, parades with a terrorist flag, and he sells you this nonsense that this flotilla is going to help anyone. No, they are only helping themselves. The amount of aid which will remain after their cruise, which will actually get into Gaza, will be stopped by Israel, first of all, and then it will be taken over by Israel, and only then what remains, perhaps, because I don't know if they really carry any aid, will be distributed by Israel, but not by them, definitely not by Hamas, because if they sailed into a Hamas-held territory, the whole of the aid would be stolen by Hamas. And here, see what he writes here. Many of my friends are part of organizations sponsored by pro-Israel donors. Yeah, by Jews. They are sponsored by Jews. They are unable to speak out loud about Gaza. Yeah. Would that mean that there are even more libertarian fuckfaces in Poland who are pro-terrorist and who hate Israel? This may be true. My DMs were flooded with heartwarming messages of support and gratitude for standing up for this cause. Yeah, we will see his Instagram page, and we will remember the names and the faces of people who support him, because all those people must be ostracized, must be called out, exposed, and ostracized. I am the voice of the people of Gaza. No, you are not. You are a bozo. You are a clown. You are a despicable human being who supports terrorists, and people of Gaza even don't like you. Especially if you're gay. But anyway, the next photo of him was this. He took a photo with this incredibly evil woman, Patrycja Wieczorkiewicz from Krytyka Polityczna. She is a far leftist lunatic who calls descendants of the Holocaust survivors Nazis. Yeah, she calls Jewish descendants of Holocaust survivors Nazis. She tells them, "Don't shit yourself, you Nazi!" So she's another attention-seeking lunatic, and that clown is taking a selfie with her. "We shut down Facebook with the last post. My DMs have been flooded with messages of support." Well, we have to realize that majority of our societies, our Western societies, are anti-Semitic, and they have a anti-Israeli streak in themselves. They don't understand, and they cannot tell difference between free societies like Israel and Europe and authoritarian dictatorships, that is, all Arab countries. And supporting an authoritarian, totalitarian dictatorship, whether it is Hamas-ruled Gaza or Palestinian Authority-ruled Palestinian territories where gays are hanged, trans people are killed, women have no rights, really supporting this kind of ideology and this kind of society, and condemning Israel for supposed genocide is a sign of total mental retardedness, total mental retardation. "Go ahead and unload your frustration on me, I can take it." Yeah, you're a tough man. You're a tough guy. "Just don't do it to people who are weaker than you." Well, let me tell you, Sebastian, taking up the Palestinian cause is the easiest thing that we can do in this time of humanity is currently in. Standing up for Israel, standing up for what is right, is the hardest thing you can do. Because you will be condemned, you will be flooded with trolls. You can be even accused, that is, formally accused for supporting genocide and taken in by police for interrogation, which happened in Poland many times. But if you support Palestine, the Palestinian cause, so-called, which you can't even define what it is, then you'll be totally hunky-dory. Nothing will happen to you. Because the world is so fucked up these days. People cannot tell the right from wrong, and they only follow their emotions. That the Palestinian cause is very emotional and sounds right. It sounds right somehow. Somehow it gives you this moral high ground. But in fact, supporting the Palestinian cause is supporting aggression, savagery, and genocide. Genocide, which Hamas tried to do on October 7th. The genocide which Arafat called for during the Second Intifada. All right, let's check his Instagram page. And now it's quite important. I need to check if we all see that. Okay, here are the comments. These are the people which support this Sebastian Węglarz and his stupid cause. His Instagram account is Młody Bandziorek, which means young hoodlum. That gives you the idea of his mental state. So he's supported by, for instance, Karolina Gemza. She works for, what was it, Foundation of Forum of Citizens Development or something like that, one of the free market think tanks in Poland. And she supports terrorism and genocide. It's good to see you on the right side of history. Jakub Bielski. some sort of a leftist? No. He is promoting Milton Friedman Memorial Day, which is an annual event organized by the Freedom and Entrepreneurship Foundation, and he is also the supporter of Palestinian terrorism, as you can see, and authoritarian Arab dictatorships. Jakub Salah Aldin, he's a Polish Arab, and obviously, great post, brother! He's a supporter of terrorism. Myth o Sisyphie, his name is Szymon Machalica, so he's some sort of another free market activist in Poland that is a corrupt, anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic bozo. All of those people must be remembered. You must remember the names and the faces and put them on some sort of a blacklist. I'm talking to every libertarian or free market organization in the world. These are people you should not invite ever. Another. Karolina Kłek-Jezierska, some sort of a lifestyle blog, obviously supporting Palestine. What's that? I don't know her. Brtek. Another bozo. Respect. This guy, I don't know if he supports or not. I don't understand this word. Una Nicoletta. Nicole Nkede. The right side of history. On which side of the history were you on October 7th? Here's a nice guy. Ilya Kudyadov. Palestine to my dick. And that's right. Bro, don't drink on Instagram. All you have to say? Yeah. I will like these posts because Ilya is right. He's an Ukrainian, and he stands on the side of Israel, on the side of a free society, on the side of goodness. All right, let's see his second post. There's the same picture on Facebook. Stop the genocide! Israel is stopping genocide by eliminating Hamas. Israel is stopping genocide of his people and the people of Gaza. Because Hamas was also oppressing people of Gaza. Israel is also stopping genocide in Sudeva, in southern Syria, because Syrian regime, Islamic Sunni regime, started massacring Druze people in southern Syria, in Suveda. But you don't care about Druze. You consider Druze to be Jews or Jew allies, Zionists. Yeah, that's what you think about Druze. You heartless bastard. Again, respect. All right, I wanted to comment here, but I don't think I'm gonna write anything. No, I wanted to say something. There was something about... oh yeah, here it is. Human rights are universal, not specific to one religion, skin color, or nationality. Exactly, and that's why only Israel guarantees human rights in this region of the world. Only in Israel, Arabs are equal and free. Not in Palestinian Authority. Not in Jordan, not in Lebanon, not in Syria, not in Egypt, not... Well, in Iraq it's been better, but it's going downhill again. Not in Iran, even not in Turkey these days. Talk about Kurds. Did you know that Kurds are, as we speak, are bombarded by the Turkish Air Force? Why don't you care about the Kurds who are genocided right now? Because you don't care about Kurds. You only care when you can do something to the Jews. You piece of crap, Jakub Bielski. All right. Let me check the chat. Greetings, Igorosaurus Kiel. If you do streams in English, why don't you answer to English language nonsense about Israel? I already did about, I did KELTHUZ Reacts to Dave Explains channel, which is a big channel, and the guy who runs it, a scientist supposedly, did a very bad video about Israel, so I simply plowed him over. You know, woke leftists, they are. This is a good question, Mr. Froy. Why they could see through the Russian propaganda, but they somehow can't see through the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas propaganda? Well, this is because of the question of inequality of power. Ukraine is smaller than Russia, is weaker than Russia, therefore it deserves our care, it deserves our support. But Israel is bigger than Gaza, is stronger than Gaza, and has already dealt much more damage to the Gazans than the Gazans had done to Israel on October 7th. This is how those people think. They see strong Israel, even though Israel is the victim, Israel was attacked, but the defensive war which Israel wages on Gaza produced an unproportionally huge loss of the enemies, of the aggressors' lives. Therefore, Israel must be in the wrong. But here's the kicker. If Ukraine was supplied with enough powerful weapons to strike deep into Russian territory, and I mean huge barrages of cruise missiles and other stuff like that, which could hit Russian cities, and that would inevitably cause also huge losses in Russian civilian life, would the woke leftists condemn Ukraine for that? Or would they cheer? Another thing which I have to mention, libertarians, that is people like Norbert, people like that Bozo, I mean, they are very quick to condemn Israel, but they can't condemn any Arab dictatorship. I mean, Sebastian Węglarz did write somewhere FUAC Hamas, FUCK Hamas. That is, he made a symbolic. He symbolically demonstrated that he hates Hamas, but how does he think Hamas will be put out of business, put out of power, if Israel does not finish the job? He cannot answer this because libertarians, they don't understand how wars are to be fought and won. They don't know how free societies should conduct and succeed in defensive wars. So, another analogy, if people like Sebastian Węglarz or Norbert Slenzok were around during the Second World War, they would, for sure, they would condemn the bombing of Dresden, They would condemn the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They would condemn the firebombing of Tokyo. They would condemn the bombing of Hamburg, which obviously devastated much of the city. If they really followed their own logic, they would condemn how the Allies waged war against the genocidal, totalitarian dictatorship of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. But Israel does not conduct its war like that. Israel uses surgical strikes, not carpet bombings. Israel takes very much huge care to limit the civilian casualties. Israel warns the civilian population of Gaza to evacuate. But obviously Hamas does not allow Gazan civilians to evacuate. Hamas forcefully stops them. So Israel is waging a very limited war compared to how the Allies waged war during World War II against powerful enemies like Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. But the war in Gaza is definitely something unique, something different, because in this war, Hamas uses its own civilians as weapons and as shields. Hamas basically conducts the war with maximizing the civilian losses. I guess neither Nazi Germany nor Imperial Japan wanted to maximize the losses of its civilians. But Hamas is something else. It is a much more demented, much more savage enemy. And obviously, the question, the fundamental question, why does Israel has to finish the job? That is what is the goal of Israel's defensive war? The goal is to get rid of Hamas once and for all, because, as recent history shows, if you do not finish the job in 2009, you get 2014 Hamas attack on Israel. And if you do not finish the job in 2014, you get October 7th, 2023. So finally, third time the charm. This is third time Netanyahu is waging a war in Gaza. But this time, fortunately, I think he came into conclusion that this time he has to finish the job. He has to eradicate Hamas, regardless of how many civilian casualties it produces. He has no choice. Israel has no choice. Even it makes Israel a pariah on the international stage. Mały Wódz Wielki Niepokój writes, did you see so-called Oxford debate on Israel? I strongly recommend. You will see the scale of success of anti-Israeli brainwash. But which Oxford debate? But I guess there were at least a few Oxford debates on Israel. Was it that debate with Jordan Peterson or someone else? Oh, the one with Yusuf Mossab Hassan, yeah. Exactly, Israel is just too careful. Imagine how long did it take for the Allies to conquer Berlin or other major German city during World War II? if Israel wanted to commit genocide, or just outright flatten Gaza, it would do so within a few days. But these people do not care about facts and especially about the reality of urban warfare. They do not care about it at all. Let me check. What is this crap? I know, he's a complete clown, this guy. And he is responsible for fundraising in the Foundation for Freedom and Entrepreneurship. This is the kind of, this is the generation of people that we older libertarians have to deal with in Poland, basically, these clowns. What I wanted also to... Hold on. Oh yeah, he's the guy. So, Paweł Słomka, also known as Sauron, he used to be very pro-Israel. I remember, but lately he's been doing much shit, talking much shit about Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, I don't blame him, but he also began peddling this stupid idea that Netanyahu is purposely killing Palestinians, that IDF somehow purposefully murders Palestinians in Gaza in order to cleanse this area for future, future Jewish settlements. This is a completely outlandish idea. And this guy, Paweł Słomka, 10 years ago, when he was pro-Israel, he had another major flaw. He was pro-Confederate States of America. I know I had a run-up with him about it. He called Lincoln a whore. He called General Sherman a whore. And today, after 10 years, he calls Benjamin Netanyahu a whore. So he's completely out of his mind. And he really likes to deal with these... he really likes to dig into these conspiracy theories of the pro-Palestinian camp these days, that Israel's secret plan is to cleanse Gaza for future Jewish settlement or maybe annexation. So, but how do you even how do you grab it? Would that mean that Netanyahu orchestrated the October 7th slaughter? That somehow Netanyahu was in cahoots with Hamas? Because really, if you believe that Netanyahu wants to cleanse Gaza of Palestinians, and this is the reason why the war takes so long, that this would actually insinuate that Netanyahu had this plan for a long time. And this guy, he seems to really believe that. This conspiracy theory that the war in Gaza today is waged solely for the purpose of cleansing Arabs from that land, so that Israel can take it. I mean, this is outrageous, but this is completely compatible with the mentality of the pro-Palestinian crowd, with crazy Marxists like Norman Finkelstein or Noam Chomsky, with crazy leftists, woke leftists, who really think that Jews are devil people, are somehow devilish. And they have, you know, these ulterior motives of supremacy, of Jewish supremacy, of cleansing the whole of the Middle East of Arabs. So how can you explain Arab soldiers in Israeli defense forces fighting at the first line of battle against their Arab buddies? Would they have some reservation about genocide, about cleansing Arabs from Gaza? What about ordinary Arab citizens of Israel who live the best lives they can in this region of the world under Israeli jurisdiction? Would they be suspicious of the things being done in Gaza? But somehow you don't hear them voicing their suspicions, because maybe perhaps this whole conspiracy theory is totally ridiculous. Hold on. Hold on, my mouse died. Wait. Oh, now it works. Let me check the chat again. Cold Granddaddy says, Sauron, that is Pavel, became one of the most pathetic people to ever grace this internet sphere. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's a combination of a bleeding heart libertarian who is not really a libertarian because he hates corporations. I mean, well, maybe some libertarians hate corporations, but he's a really in a poor state of mind. But you have to understand, his ideal of political philosophy is J.R.R. Tolkien. Exactly. His ideal world is Tolkien's Shire. So yeah, Hassan Sky writes that he's being irritated by the pro-Palestinian factors who compare Israeli attacks on Hezbollah terrorists or on the Iranian regime to assaults made by Third Reich. Well, you know, authoritarian dictatorships in the minds of the leftists and some paleo-libertarians, authoritarian dictatorships have the right to exist, you know. They are much more legitimate than liberal democracies of the West. This is a very common theme among paleo-libertarians. That is, they love to shit on their own countries, the liberal democracies, which guarantee at least most of the rights, of the individual rights, but they never seem to be much concerned with authoritarian dictatorships and the oppression the authoritarian dictatorships commit on their own population. So a paleo-libertarian is only concerned with, the lack of freedom of speech in Great Britain, but he doesn't care about the lack of freedom of speech in Russia. He even considers Russia to be much more free, And here's the thing. A libertarian in Great Britain can voice his condemnation of Great Britain and the lack of some freedoms in Great Britain, but a libertarian in Russia cannot voice his concern about the lack of freedom in Russia. He can only voice concern about the lack of freedom in Western countries. So you see, libertarians, wherever they live, they can shit on the Western countries, but they never shit on the authoritarian dictatorships. Because they don't want to do that in the West, and they would be arrested if they did that under authoritarian dictatorships. So it's some sort of a internal censorship, I guess. Or they are maybe just sick, pathological, psychopathic fucks. All right. Let me check how long are we going on? Over an hour. What can we say more? I don't know. Let me go to the website of the foundation for which those guys work for. I mean, at least one of those guys. What was it? All right. So, I mean, I know those guys, Kamil Grzebyta, I know these guys. Marcin Chmielowski, he's the vice president, or at least used to be. So I know that Marcin is not a pro-Palestinian fuck. He supports Israel. At least he used to support Israel. Jacek Spendel is also, well, at least he supports the right of Israel to exist, which is indeed an achievement these days, because libertarians even seem to deny Israel the right to exist. I mean, Norbert literally denies Israel the right to exist, because he considers the whole 1947 partition and 1948 defensive war of Israel against the onslaught of 5 Arab armies as illegitimate. He is that evil, that despicable. But as far as much as I know, Jacek never denied Israel's right to exist nor to defend. So yeah, so it's very sad that I have to call for ostracizing of people like that, and I have to call to deny any funds to the Foundation of Freedom and Entrepreneurship. Wait, let's check the English version. I mean, people who are connected with this foundation are, in fact, many of them, like that Węglarz guy, many of them are openly pro-Palestinian, that is, pro-terrorist, pro-authoritarian. They deny the right of Israel to defend itself against genocide and slaughter. I mean, the thing is, with Polish libertarians at least, the thing is that most of them were not and are not pro-Putin, and they support Ukraine. But this is probably mostly because we are Polish. We are Polish, so we understand the threat from Russia. And also, most of those libertarians were active in the third sector. They made many connections, many acquaintances with Ukrainian freedom fighters since 2014. So Polish libertarians of the third sector activists, they were always close to Ukrainians who suffered because of Russia, were close to Georgians, mostly thanks to Students for Liberty initiatives and like that. But these initiatives were never explicitly pro-Israel or somehow much engaged in Israel. I think there was Students for Liberty Israel chapter or something like that. I know that Jeffrey Tucker visited Israel on Students for Liberty event, but it was a long time ago. Anyway, Israel was never a subject. It was never a topic, a hot topic. So they never had a position on Israel. And that some Polish libertarians were friendly to Israel was, I think, mostly thanks to me. I remember 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, I really thought that I made a difference because of my podcasts and my songs about Israel. That I really saw many people to be friendly to Israel. They really seem to understand that Israel has a right to exist and to defend itself against Palestinian terrorists and Arab dictatorships and Iranian axis of evil. But these days, since October 7, 2023, it all changed. And people like Norbert Slenzok became publicly anti-Israel, publicly started to deny Israel's right to exist, to completely evade facts, and to perpetuate propaganda disguised as science. For instance, fables written by Israeli pseudo-historian Ilan Pappé. Let me show you. Ilan Pappé, sloppiest historian. Ilan Pappé must be one of the world's sloppiest historians. Where is that? Here's this article written by Benny Morris, who is an older generation Israeli historian who used to be a fable writer. That is, he was also engaging in false narrative, that is, inventing things that hadn't really taken any place in history. But after the Second Intifada, he really saw Palestinians for what they are. And now he's criticizing Ilan Pappé, and I really recommend this article. This article, The Liar as a Hero, that's the name of the article, by Ben Morris, written over 10 years ago. Objectivists were completely right about libertarian cracks from the start, writes Cold Granddaddy, and yes, you are obviously completely right on this topic. I will try to paste the link to this video to some of the objectivists which know the topic, who know the topic. Let me show you. Ayn Rand Center, UK, that's the name of the channel. Ah, here it is. Let me show you. Can you see? Can you see? Libertarian anti-Semitism, and who's on the thumbnail? Sebastian Bozo. Exactly that. They talk about him in this video.
As a broad church.
So I already connected with Razi Ginsburg and with Jonathan Down on Facebook. So I will just send them link to my video, and maybe they will watch it, and maybe they will make some moves to completely ostracize those people, those Polish libertarian bozos. Anyway. Hello, Eliyahu. Oh yeah, I mean, Eliyahu, you are right. They want to pick up some Ukrainian girls on pro-Ukrainian campus meetings. Yeah, this is what all those events, those popular libertarian or free market think tank events are usually about. They are about drinking a lot of alcohol, and despite having a wife, hitting on all the girls you can. True story. Yeah, you are right. Yeah, Jews settled in Palestine by buying land there. Not some colonialist bullshit, but Mr. Norbert Slenzok, he repeats after Ilan Pappé that Israel is a colonialist settler state, and only Israel is such a state. None other state, not a single Arab dictatorship is a colonialist settler state. So let me tell you, Norbert, but I know that you don't believe me and you don't care, that Israel is the only refugee state in history. It was literally founded by refugees and descendants of refugees, of Jewish refugees, especially from Russia. All those Jews who came to Ottoman Palestine in 1880s, as early as 1880s, escaping from the pogroms from Russia, from Imperial Russia. They came to Ottoman Palestine as refugees, escaping with their lives and little more. And in less than 20 years after they arrived, the Arabs already started hating them and trying to get rid of them. This is the reality. So yeah, it did not start on October 7th. The Arab hatred for Jews started in 7th century. Bozo. Yeah, Pape is a representative of the so-called new historians who blatantly distort and lie about Israel's past. But Ilan Pape publicly admitted that he is not interested in facts. He's interested in narrative. He's interested in forging a new narrative. That is a narrative in which Israel is the bad guy and Palestinians are the good guys. You know, the oppressed. Pagelka writes, there's a book by Ephraim Karsh, Fabricating Israeli History, that debunks new historians' dishonest approach to history. Also, Walter Block writes about them in his Classical Liberal Case for Israel. Indeed, that's true. I mean, I don't care if Norbert watches or not. I'm only interested that his employer, the University of Zielona Góra, takes necessary steps to dismiss him from his position. Ratzi, Ginsburg is the boss there. Unfortunately, I am not an Ayn Rand cultist these days. I don't have any cultish feelings towards anyone. Also, as we are here writing about small groups of Jews in Palestine, all those pro-Palestinian lunatics, they never mention the ethnic cleansing of Jews which happened when Israel was established, and all the Jewish minorities in Arab countries were expelled overnight. They were told to get out by the Arabs. It was 850,000 of Jewish refugees which had to escape from Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Northern Africa, I mean Morocco, Tunisia, what have you, Egypt. They had to take all their belongings into a handbag and basically run to Israel, or they would be slaughtered. Nobody talks about this Nakba, don't they? Do they? Anyway, so yeah, so this was another wave of refugees. It was in 1948, and also there were several years later there were operations initiated by Israel to get other Jews, Jews who were left behind and somehow survived the purge And also we must not forget about the Jews who were living in the West Bank, that is Judea and Samaria, who were living in these lands before 1948 for thousands of years. For instance, in East Jerusalem, they were living there for thousands of years. And when Transjordan invaded Israel in 1948 and took over West Bank with East Jerusalem, they ethnically cleansed these lands of those Jews. I don't know, it was maybe around, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe around 5,000 Jews were expelled from their homes, where they've been living for thousands of years. And Israel only liberated these Jewish lands in 1967. So the Jewish settlements in the West Bank are a way of returning to the land in which the Jews have lived for thousands of years until 1948. So anyone who calls Jewish settlements in Judea and Samaria illegal, he's out of his mind. And these settlements are not an obstacle to peace. Palestinians are an obstacle to peace. Or maybe Palestinian leaders. But no, ordinary Palestinians are also Jew haters, so it all comes down to this particular characteristic of Arabs. Jew hating. Yeah, the paradox of the anti-Semites who think of themselves as patriots or nationalists. They hate Israel, even though Israel, to large extent, is the wet dream of nationalists. So anti-Semitic nationalists who don't want Jews in Poland but hate Israel, so where do they want Jews to go? Well, I believe an anti-Semitic nationalist simply wants Jews to disappear completely. That's why you never cooperate with nationalists, you never talk to nationalists, well, maybe except when you give them orders to shut up. Basically, you need to ostracize nationalists completely. I'm talking about people like Grzegorz Braun and people like that. So, I mean, the sentiment of libertarians towards Palestine, towards all those Arab dictatorships, and this hatred of Israel is, as Ayn Rand called it many decades ago, it is a hatred of the good for being the good. It is the hatred of Israel being a liberal democracy and standing up for itself. It is the hatred of a successful state, successful country with a strong state. Somehow libertarians prefer dysfunctional, authoritarian kleptocracies, like every single Arab state, to Israel or to USA. And this has been the libertarian theme song since 1960s, since Rothbard cherished, applauded North Vietnam, applauded Viet Cong, and cheered whenever an American airman was shot down over Vietnam. This is the core of libertarian nihilism. This is the core of libertarian hatred of the good. That's why maybe I should never ever call myself a libertarian again. Yeah, Eliyahu writes, settlements as an obstacle to peace implies that Arab cannot be expected to live peacefully next to a Jewish village. Obviously, because a Jewish village, a successful Jewish village which thrives, triggers a poor, oppressed Arab. He's oppressed by the Jewish success. He cannot see a lush, green, a prosperous Jewish village because he gets envious, and envy drives him to aggression. So it's not his fault, it's the Jews' fault, because Jews were simply too successful, too prosperous. This is the mindset of the pro-Palestinian fucktard. He never blames Arabs, he never blames the Palestinian mindset for the wars, the aggression, for anything that happens there. He always blames the Jews. It's always the fault of the Jews that Arabs attack them. Exactly. Judenrein Palestina as a prerequisite to creation of an Arab state. Because somehow the Western woke left cannot imagine a multicultural Palestinian state where Jews and Arabs live next to each other in peace and harmony. Because subconsciously the left knows that Arabs would attack the Jews. So, you know, preemptively, in order to not suffer a PR disaster in this free Palestine, they have to preemptively remove the Jews, so there won't be any slaughter from the day one. So, you know, libertarians, even those libertarian academics who supposedly should have known better, they completely ignore the nature of evil, nature of Palestinian mentality, nature of Hamas. And exactly as Cold Granddaddy writes here, they do not understand that, or evade to understand that if Israel stops defending itself, then the Arabs would be free to massacre the Jews. But if Arabs stop attacking, like in this war, if Hamas surrenders, drops his weapons, and releases hostages, war ends, and there's peace. But not a single one of those libertarian pro-freedom activists, pro-peace activists, they never talk about it. They never talk about putting pressure on Hamas, putting pressure on the Palestinian side. No. They only want to put pressure on Israel and basically distort the image of Israel as the side which abhors peace. You know, this stubborn, evil, warmongering side. They want to paint Israel as those evil warmongers. Exactly as Rothbard and Hoppe paint America as the warmongering empire, which starts wars all over the world. And Israel is painted just like that. It starts wars. Didn't you hear? Israel started a war with Iran, now started a war with Qatar. It even bombed Tunisia. Didn't you hear? Israel bombed Tunisia last week. Those lunatics, they really believe that Israel bombed this flotilla. This Gaza flotilla, they bombed this flotilla in Tunisia. LOL. Bartek, you are asking about Seba Węglarz. I already showed pictures of him with Patrycja Wieczorkiewicz, the leftist fanatic. Who is that Jacob Piekut? It's a false account. It's a troll account. Yeah, libertarians supporting Muslim totalitarian anti-human regime is actually the highest comedy. But libertarians are comedians, didn't you know? Dave Smith, comedian. Murray Rothbard, he's a comedian, just like Woody Allen. Grenadier writes, Israel is also a rogue state. They try to intimidate and discredit people in the Netherlands who were critical of Israel's actions. What kind of people? How were they critical? Were they spreading pro-Hamas propaganda? And how did they try to intimidate people? They kidnapped somebody and took him to a torture chamber. Israel, you're right, Israel is also a religious despotic state that cannot be treated on an equal footing with the civilized countries of the West. Are you kidding me? Israel is a liberal democracy. Obviously, the current government, the current cabinet of Israel under Prime Minister Netanyahu is a very bad government, but Netanyahu is not even a religious Jew. He's secular. He's obviously sold his soul to the religious fanatics, but as soon as the war ends, Netanyahu will be ousted, thanks to democratic institutions which are robust in Israel. The Supreme Court of Israel has not been curtailed by Netanyahu's government, and is still the proper check and balance on government. And Israeli electorate, Israeli voters will vote Netanyahu out. All right. What I want to mention, just to end, to finish this stream. Do you know people like Academic Agent or very popular in the American right today, Curtis Yarvin? who used to write under the pseudonym Mencius Moldbug. Those two people, academic agent, real name Nima Parvini, and Curtis Yarvin, both of those guys, around 20 years ago, they became interested in Austrian economics and libertarian thought. But as time passed by, they became very reactionary. Academic agent is a full-on reactionary. Basically, he there's nothing libertarian about him now. And Curtis Yarvin became basically a mouthpiece for some sort of a American monarchy. He would like the president to be like this CEO of a whole country, but with even more absolute power. So, as you can see, this is the result of paleo-libertarianism going too far. Because both of those people, academic agent and Curtis Yarvin, they were hugely influenced by the paleo-libertarian philosopher Hans Hermann Hoppe. The German, he used to be a Marxist. He used to study under Habermas in Germany, and later became a libertarian under Rothbard. But when he wrote this famous book, Democracy, the God That Failed, it clearly showed him as a sort of a reactionary, because he concluded that not only monarchy is better than democracy, but even better would be feudalism. Well, he doesn't state it like that, but when you think about it for a long time, and I read Democracy, the God That Failed in 2006, so I had a lot of time to think about it. I think the end game for this kind of libertarian stateless society thinking with Hoppe would be, the so-called Europe of 1,000 Liechtensteins, which is basically feudalism. So this is reactionary to the bone. And as I mentioned in my Polish version, in my Polish podcasts, libertarians of that sort, they see all military conflicts basically as a result of mass democracy, which makes all conflicts massive. So the answer to massive conflicts between mass democracies, but somehow Second World War was also such a conflict, would be to dismantle democracies into smaller and smaller polities akin to medieval feudal order. Because in such an order, two small states cannot wage a massively deadly war because it would be economically unfeasible. So they only can wage small skirmishes, which results in small number of casualties, especially among civilians. But somehow, this kind of thinking ignores the huge amount of civilian losses in the 30-year war between numerous hundreds of German states in the 17th century. So somehow small states do not guarantee small civilian losses. So this kind of thinking among libertarians is also quite faulty, in my honest opinion. But what it implies is that such a stateless society, in fact, a society characterized by small fragmented states and centers of power, would be in a constant low-intensity conflict. So there wouldn't be massive wars or massive troop movements, but basically low-level gang warfare and oppression on a small but constant regular scale. So for any of us who cherishes life under current liberal democratic system, such a life in a feudal or maybe quasi-feudal low-intensity conflict society would be very, very oppressive, because you would be basically forced to carry firearms with you all the time, because you would never know if a rival gang would appear to extract tribute for protection or something like that. So it's hard for us to imagine life under such a system, a low-intensity conflict, where, for instance, a religious sect in a town, in a neighboring town, would simply come up with the idea that they have to sacrifice young virgins from our town to appease their god or something like that. This is how I envision the society that Hopper and other libertarian reactionaries would have us live in. So this is a topic for another day, but this very much connects libertarianism with its support for organizations like Hamas and Hamas-run Gaza, because they envision a society in which, for instance, Israel is unable to defend itself, is unable to wage a proper defensive war which eradicates Hamas, because somehow it violates the proportionality principle of libertarianism in war. So then Israel is forced to only wage a very limited war to not exceed the amount of casualties first caused by the Hamas onslaught on October 7. And then in the next stage of the conflict, Hamas strikes again, because it was never weakened by Israeli strikes. So Israel retaliates again, and finally they come into a negotiating table, and they negotiate. They negotiate a peace treaty in which Hamas is allowed to annually kill, let's say, 200 Jews, and in response, Israel is only authorized to bomb 200 civilians every year. Sounds reasonable? Well, according to libertarians like Hoppe or Norbert Slenzog, it certainly is. It's a certainly reasonable outcome for a libertarian social order. All right, let me check the chat. All right, Grenadier, you are saying that the Dutch Secret Service has officially designated Israel as a state posing a threat to national security, joining Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Okay, so Israel and US should designate Netherlands as a supporter of terrorism and bomb it. That's what US and Israel should do. Netherlands is a rogue state which is inimical to its citizens and to civilization itself. That should be done with every state which threatens Israel, including Spain. Spain threatened Israel. I mean, they lamented that they don't have nuclear weapons, but if they had, they would slaughter Jews. So Spain should be designated an enemy state, and Israel should basically, well, first of all, Israel should get rid of the Spanish embassy and Dutch embassy. Oh yeah, Jakub Bożydar Wiśniewski. He is another libertarian lunatic. Let me check. He is the guy. Let's check his Facebook. Oh yeah, he wrote something like this. Global war, which takes place in all scales at the same time, blah, blah, blah. But basically, oh yeah, he blames Israel for everything. Here he blames Israel for everything. Oh. Purposeful starving in one country of the Middle East, and at the same time unprecedented bombing attack on another country of the Middle East. So yeah, he also mentions the Russian drone attack on Poland and the knife attack on the Ukrainian refugee in America, and the assassination of Kirk as you know, the downfall of the modern world. But he managed to blame Israel twice, that Israel is purposely starving people in Gaza and is unprecedentedly bombing another country. You mean the attack on the Hamas leadership in Qatar, which should have been done on October 8th. But Jakub doesn't mention the terrorist attack in East Jerusalem on Jewish civilians by 2 Hamas operatives. Somehow it slipped his mind. Another terrorist attack on Jews. And Jakub doesn't mention it among all these other events. Why not? Maybe because Jewish lives don't matter to Jacob. Isn't it? After all, some Catholics, and Jakub is a practicing Catholic, he probably does not consider Jewish lives to be especially valuable. He doesn't consider Israel to be worthy of defending itself, of having the right to hit the political architects of the slaughter of Jews on October 7th in Qatar. He doesn't think that Israel has the right to kill those monsters. I'm out of words for those lunatics. Let's get back to chat. Oh yeah, Igorosaurus mentions here that Aztec Empire was doing exactly what I mentioned about that sect sacrificing people. Yeah, it was a wholesale, state-level, massive sacrifice, which Aztec Empire was doing. Exactly. But you know, what I wanted to suggest is that if you don't have an overarching sort of, you know, the ultimate arbiter in law and order, you would get such local oppressions and local conflicts basically blooming like flowers in the spring. And obviously, if we presuppose an order in which everybody in the society is a committed anarcho-capitalist, then perhaps this wouldn't happen. But in the next generation, some people, because they have free will, they may become inclined to other ideologies. Perhaps they become interested in communism, right? And under anarcho-capitalism, they may try to some maybe more violence-based interactions, and what then? You would have to kill them, right? Or stop them violently. I wonder if Grenadier is actually Dr. Piotr Napierała himself. Israel is trying to perform diplomatic actions as any country would do. But Netherlands is trying to hurt Israel. So there's no contest. Netherlands is immoral, Israel is in the right. I don't believe in any gods, Mr. Jaskier. I'm completely secular, I'm an atheist, and I don't think that Israel has a right to exist because of religion. Israel has a right to exist because it is a free society. And it was formed voluntarily, legally, that is by Jewish settlers buying land and mixing it with their labor and declaring independence as a free society, as a liberal democracy, and not as a religious dictatorship, which it is not. But every Arab country, to a larger or smaller extent, is in fact religious. Adam S. is right. Every country in the world has a special ministry for interfering in affairs of other countries, tellingly called Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Exactly. All right. Let me check. We are over 2 hours. All right. I spent over 2 hours exposing libertarian pro-Palestinian factors, because I have no other words for those people. As you can see, these people, they evade truth, evade facts about Israel and Palestine, and they support, unequivocally, they support the Palestinian cause, which is a very evil cause. There's nothing noble about the cause. There's nothing connected in any way, shape, or form to human dignity, because you will never have human dignity if Israel disappeared from the Middle East. Arabs who live and thrive in Israel as its citizens would be enslaved if there were free Palestine to exist in that region instead of Israel. The only chance for Palestinian Arabs who live outside Israel is for Israel to annex all lands in the West Bank and to annex Gaza and impose Israeli civilian law on these lands. But Palestinian Jew hatred must be extirpated. Palestinians must be denazified, just like Germans were denazified after 1945. So they stop hating Jews, stop hating Western civilization, and embrace democracy, liberalism, and capitalism. And this is the message for today. So I'll end this stream right now. Thank you for watching, and I don't know, support Israel and support free societies. Do not support libertarians. Bye.